Here we go. So, Warren, thank you for joining once more. And especially under these circumstances, you had to use other people's rooms because apparently there's power outages where you were, that you make the time under these circumstances. We want to speak today about something that is very dear to you, because you started out in your career as a sports massage therapist and have learned to use various biofeedback devices and things. So you obviously, in addition to being a hypnosis practitioner, you work with people that are displaying or coming to you physical problems, pains, aches, spasms, I would assume, in the body. And I could assume that maybe sometimes you use a mix of all the modalities that you've learned, because hypnosis works well adjacent to some other modalities. But of course, in this talk, we want to talk more about the hypnosis practices.
So, Claudia, so thank you once again. Thank you so much for inviting me on this. It's a privilege to be here. And, you know, like you said, so what happened for me was I started off in a very physical world of personal training, where for decades I was a personal trainer and just doing lots of very physical work, lots of competitions, training endurance athletes. It was a very, very physical, extremely sort of external environment. And just by working with people over such an extended period of time, the more I actually worked with people and listened to the language, I just got such a deep sense that there was so much more to who we actually are. So it sort of deep dove into some wonderful research, and then of course found the hypnotism, which was a wonderful modality to discover, because it was all about the power of language. And in listening to what people were saying about their bodies and the relevant way an emotional response was coming up in their bodies, or there was an inflammation, it was like over years of just watching people, and I became very, very good at that, watching sort of what the language and people were using, and almost like a physical response in their body. So with the trance work and with the actual, and then as a sports massage therapist, this was such an amazing way to join the two modalities. And we would then sit the person down, get them to have a conversation about what it is they were experiencing, why, how, when did it start, what were the emotional associations, how long has it been going on. And a lot of people, like you say, are very sort of fixated on the physicalness of what's going on. I've got a sore foot, or I've got an inflamed back, or these other symptoms. But then by and by, in the conversation that we'd have in the hypnotic space, in the sports massage space, as people begin to get more and more in touch with their bodies and they began to feel how it felt, there would almost be a release, with new languaging. And when people began to understand that their language so directly affects the physical response in their bodies, that's when I started having breakthroughs in my own practice.
Yeah. Okay. So do you find it then also true that, especially when there is pain on a high scale included, that the clients that we see are kind of living in a pain world and not in the resourceful world where they could possibly understand why this is happening? But before we answer, I just want to emphasize one more time that as non-medical hypnotherapists, we do not diagnose, we do not treat, and we do not prescribe. This is out of our scope of practice, and in fact, we don't need to do these things. So when the client is completely absorbed in their world of discomfort in the physical body, I mean, we all had some pain, acute pain, I would assume, so everybody can imagine what it feels like. You kind of, the doors are locked to the world of understanding what possibly lies behind the physical symptoms. Would you agree with that?
I do, Claudia. I mean, for instance, if I may use an example of a client, I had a chap come to me probably about a year ago who'd been for a decade having some extreme back pain, like absolutely extreme, crippling. He hobbled around. He would be like for 3 or 4 days, possibly lying in bed, traction, chiropractors, physios, painkillers, and then it would go away, and then it would exacerbate, come back, and then it would just be the continuous cycle of pain And then after a while, it just became a continuous presence where all of his languaging, all of his activity, everything was focused around how to manage the pain. And literally by that focus, his focus to shifting into the pain all of the time actually made the pain even worse, because that was his world. And it's like, well, obviously those are the symptoms that he's experiencing. How can it be anything else? So then he came through, and we had 1 or 2 sessions just to establish what the background was, and there were very deep underlying emotional issues that we then uncovered, in the pure hypnosis space. And then eventually it got to a point where we decided that the next step forward was to combine the hypnotic language with some physical release work. And it was in that moment, and it was that perfect moment where everything just came together. And it's not always the case, but it was in that one perfect moment where the combination of pain, exhaustion, letting go, desperate to have an outcome, where everything just came together. And there was a blinding moment for this client. I can actually just feel that energy move. There was a blinding moment for that client where there was a complete and utter and absolute release. So there just a sort of huge cathartic release where tears and letting go and crying and just the sort of this deep sobbing. And it was in that absolute letting go into everything that he'd ever been holding on to, that there was just a complete neural, chemical, physical, emotional, and even I would say spiritual reset, which allowed him to literally get off the table and walk away pain-free.
That's amazing.
Obviously, those are astounding moments, and those are moments that I live for. It doesn't happen for everyone, because everybody has different levels of acceptance and awareness and anticipation of how and their backgrounds into how they would interpret healing. So spontaneous remission absolutely exists. It absolutely exists as a phenomenon. But then also what I've come to understand about spontaneous remission is that somebody may take a year to come back from something, but at their own pace where they feel comfortable, and only about how deep their belief goes as to how long it should actually take them to heal. And that, being exposed, such an unbelievable space to be able to, and privileged to be able to work in a space like this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I don't know whether there are many of our graduates who have other modalities like you have, supporting the work on the physical body, because I know of very, very many cases where back pain or migraines, headaches, all these kind of things have been either how can we say, reduced or completely relieved by understanding the inner conflict that was holding them up.
So, Claudia, that speaks directly to myself as a parts hypnosis facilitator. And there's a part of the person that wants healing, and there's a part of the person that's resisting the healing for whatever reason that is. And it's when those two, and it's in that hypnotic space that we actually get those two parts to communicate with each other and come to it. There's a conflict resolution, and once that resolution has been achieved, there's been miraculous results. People have had better movement in their necks. The one lady that I was actually working with, she had heart palpitations. She'd been having heart palpitations for a long time. Just they cleared up. And it was only months later that she actually called me and said, "Oh, by the way, that session, this is what actually happened." And it's just when we get feedback like that, that's so wonderful. And invariably there's always a physical release associated with the work that we do. And that's really.
Yeah, so the message here, we want to keep it as short and brief as possible, but the message really here is obviously step number one is to go to your medical practitioner and be checked out medically. That goes without saying, and even medication might be the right thing to do. That is just an area where we don't interfere with. But if the client then senses or seeks additional assistance to find the root cause. You know, I mean, sometimes if you break a leg, the leg is broken. It's quite easy to understand what the root cause is. But sometimes, and also chronic pain would be a whole new chapter to talk about, how this comes from the non-tangible feeling or mental world into the physical body. And if anybody who is listening or watching this is feeling that resonates with them, to actually speak to a hypnosis practitioner to unravel this how this is these systems are interlinking, because naturally we actually have the ability to listen and listen to our body, and the messages are sometimes clear. And I often regard pain as a signal on the dashboard, like when your fuel gauge is on empty and it's red, you wouldn't ignore it. You will go and refuel, because that's what needs to be done. And if we would see pain sometimes like that, we would see it as a warning sign that something is out of homeostasis, is out of the equilibrium, is not in harmony, that there is an underlying inner conflict or something. Then this is something that can be really unraveled, and you seem to have a lot of experience with this.
Absolutely, Claudia. I mean, in terms of, I mean, the hypnotic space for me has been a revelation in terms of being able to work with people and to begin to understand that mind-body connection. And it's in that mind-body connection where the two, we're so used to existing externally. We're so used to just existing as an external, highly externally focused being, that we actually have no idea that the sort of the mind and body sort of blends, and like you said, the word homeostasis, all our body seeks is homeostasis. All our body mind, you know, we function as one, seeks balance. And it's in that balance when we start to ignore the one or the other, you know, we're so externally focused that it's just all about the physicalness, and we can't even begin to comprehend that we as an intelligent being can have, and our thoughts have an effect. And we all know that now. There's so much science to prove the fact that our thinking very definitely affects our physical environment, and our body is very much part of that environment. We can't ignore that. And in the hypnotic state, and in working with people physically on the massage table, is begin to allow people and invite people to start eventually thinking greater than their environment, as opposed to letting our physicalness inform us that this is just how it is. And I think that's a very important thing, is that in that mind-body balance, is that we as conscious beings have an impact. We can actually literally affect our heart rate, our breathing, our variabilities, all these other things. And of course, if we're worried and anxious about an inflammation in our bodies, then that encodes that reality that the anxiousness and the inflammation starts getting worse. Whereas if, okay, so I'm having this symptom, let me go to the doctor, let me do all the things that I would do, but then also let me pour energy and love and care and see that part of me healing and coming back, and ask that question of my body, what is the message here? What am I not seeing? And it's in that invitation to ask people, so let's develop that relationship with our bodies, so that we can begin to understand just how important our bodies are, that it's the way we feel our fullest expression of life. And it's in that coming together. And I think that's our work. I think that's our work going forward, is to actually get more and more people just become so aware that we are mind and body working as one in perfect harmony. And that's what and the more we achieve that, the less chronic fatigue, the less chronic pain, the more understanding we have. And then as the symptoms come up, we know, okay, so what am I missing? What do I need to listen to? And so we can move into that space of healing. And healing, it is that old, the root word is remember that you are whole. And whenever there's a symptom, it's just reminding us that we're not allowing ourselves to be whole in that particular moment. And ignored, Claudia, like you say, it can extend into something like, you know, inflammation, and even more chronic, like a cancer or something like that.
Wow. Warren, I think this is such a deep topic, and with every fifth or sixth person, I'm just picking out one thing, suffering from chronic pain virtually worldwide. I'm sure this is of interest to lots of people, and we haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg here. We could make 100 videos on various aspects, but I want to leave it as that for now, because yeah, maybe we have time in future to do more. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything. Would you like to say something in closing?
No, just once again, Claudia, thank you so much. And, you know, the South African Institute of Hypnotism, it's been since 2019, it's been an absolute revelation for me. So all I can say, such gratitude. And for those of you that are watching, know that at the deepest level right now, should you want it and give yourself permission, your healing can actually start right now.
Right now. That's it. That's
right
it.
Now.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.